my beautiful family of light. I will begin, but I would like to begin in one of our customary terms of endearment to how we introduce ourselves to people, because it's very precious to us, which is Asumi Lamb, which is the light of our sacrifice to the community, which I deem is very important because you know our sacrifice is very keen in this day and time, especially for our community. And what we sacrifice to our community is our light. Our light is our actions, as well as the wisdom that conveys our action. So, beloved brothers and sisters, I would like to give a little brief analogy, or I would say an intro to what Zodin is about and where it came from and how it developed. Our this is beautiful because we've been practicing this Zodin Tree Day now since 2016, actually 2013. My fault, 2013. So that means 7 years now we've been in action, and there are people with us online that have been practicing our Zodin Tree Day for a couple of years now, and you know, I thank my community of light that has been practicing with us in our Zodin Tree celebration. Because this celebration is indeed an event that celebrates the soul. Because the community, when we become one, that's a soul that's unyielding. So what I want to say is this: is that my family is a unique family because we are immigrants and migrants in this land that we're living in now, in this wilderness of North America. Meaning that my family in the early 1900s immigrated. I mean, the early, this 20th century, they immigrated to America because, it was perilous times in the country they came from. And that country, which was that they came from, was Haiti in the early 50s and 60s. It was a tumultuous era at that time, from the 30s or even from the 20s and the early 1900s, all the way up to now in the 20th century. It was a crisis in our countries at that time. Going back and forth, trying to establish the economy as well as the government. So most Haitian people, they understand what it is to fight for what is deemed right and uplifting themselves. They've been uplifting themselves since the early 1800s, and ultimately they came to a standstill, but yet it was a victory, and their victory was that standstill. So my family been fighting for hundreds of years now. So this is not to make it light or make it too heavy, but this is a fact. My immigration got me here in this belief system, which is actually not a belief system, but it's a way of sacrificing for the community. And it's that light that's very important. My other side of my family were migrants. When I say migrants, because they necessarily immigrate to the country, but they migrated from one part of the country to another part of the country. And this was occurring frequently in what you call North America today. They migrated from the South to the North, from down South all the way to New York City. And in this time, people was migrating because of what? Economics. Simple as that. Same thing with my immigration part of my family. We immigrated to America because of economics. And to be able to do better, not just to in this society that we moved into, but to be able to eventually return one day with a glitter of hope for those who we left behind, who actually didn't leave behind, but we were a shining example for them, to be a bridge to connect and re-examine what we were doing wrong, where we were at, where we left from. That's the position of most people that migrate. It's not to just abandon where they came from, but it's to be a beacon of light for where they left, so that one day they can go back and have something of substance to give back when they do return. So with that, it was very unique that my elder today, he was discussing and made sure a point, and I heard it. I made sure I allowed myself to let it echo in my memory and my ears. He said, "Do not let others define you. You make sure you define yourself, because they will definitely define you." So Zodin was something that when we first began our journey, or when I first began my journey with Zodin, the word was introduced to me as Zadan at first. So I wrestled with the word, trying to understand its perplexities and its light that it was trying to guide me to. And then it evolved to Zodin Ibn. So at that point, it was the children of Zodin. And this children of Zodin, you know, these children were the orchid, or the harvest of a tree. And this tree we called in the organization Azahara, which is not only an orchid, but it also represents what you call a light, a luminescent light. And one of our prophets, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad, 14 years ago, his daughter name was also Azahara, which is his first daughter, Fatima. So this is very unique because in our country, Haiti, one of our leaders of the movement who was pivotal in the ceremonies of getting the people organized, her name was also Fatima. So that's very unique and succinct. I mean, very unique, not succinct, but very unique because it binds us together. Whereas that I'm here, she's there. And hold on one second. Okay, pardon me 1 second, y'all. Okay. No, something popped up on the screen just now. I'm not sure what it is.
Just X out of it.
Okay, there it is. Okay, cool. So with Fatima in our league, she assisted and helped organizing the people. So coming back to what I was specifying about my point was that in expressing and defining who we are, I wanted to read to you something from our lessons inside the Zodin School of Thought. In this lesson, it says, question number 1, what is the meaning of Zodin? Answer, Zoajim. Za, Wa, and Jim. Those are the 3 letters that make Zuj. Zuj, the meaning of it in Arabia is to germinate, to employ parallelism, divine union. To note, it's in its root translation, it bears the meaning to conceal, small, large, small temple, small mosque, or prayer room. Deen, Dayin, signs of spirituality and all its awakening powers in the universe. In this, our service is as the heavenly children of the harvest of organic heaven. And this word in Arabic is called Fuadwas or Fuadorsi. And this means paradise. So what's unique and beautiful about that is that we have learned inside of the meaning of the word that it wasn't just something I just made up out of clear blue sky, but actually is the derivative from a banner of light which has been shown to us through signs and messages throughout the scriptures and spiritual studies that allowed us to be able to get a glimmer of light in a dark place, like we are in right now today in America. So with that, I want to open up to everybody that when we did establish Zodin, it wasn't just a what you would say, it wasn't an accident. No, it wasn't. It was a plethora of events spiritually that occurred. Like, for instance, let's go into it for a minute here. Zodin. Now we understand the meaning of Zodin and its polarity or its duality. A duality is like the Quran gives us or gives up to us in its ayats, or which is in the signs. It says that day is not like unto night, and night like is not unto day. Then you have another duality, which is like in the Kitab, the Quran. It says that there is fresh water seas, and then there is salt water seas. But yet man meditates not over why it's so. Very important, because if you take a cup of water or 2 cups of water and you put salt in 1 cup, what occurs? A dissolution occurs. The salt from a solid particle dissolves into the water. Same as with the sugar. When you pour sugar, a spoonful of sugar into a cup of water, it dissolves, not as fast though, but yet it dissolves. Now, can the salt and water be seen? The salt and sugar be seen, or as it was when it first went in? No, but the water does become slightly murky. Yet it's not there. It's not apparent no more. But because you can't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. And that's a problem we have today in our schools of thought and adventure. There is no adventure in our schools of thought and wisdom. So, as I convey to other people, if you taste the water, what happens? One is salty. It tastes, the salt is still there, but it's there in a prevalent manner, but in another, not dimension, but another state or another quality. So as the sugar is there present, but another state or another quality. So it didn't just disappear. Just like your spirit, when it leaves the body, it just disappear. The flavor does reappear, but how does it reappear? This is something that we have ignored as bodies of thought and schools of knowledge and wisdom. Okay, so now, reason why I mention that is because your body, your personage is like a cup or a cup of water. And depending on what manifestation of wisdom and knowledge you receive, it is unlikely to salt or sugar. So, for example, as a child growing up in America with a family of immigrants and migrants, I used to rush in the living room to listen to I say he's my grandfather, listen to him speak in Creole to his associates and his companions in the living room or the dining room. And they will be going into such amounts of intellectual discussions about the being and ongoing of the Haitian culture and government. It wasn't just stipulated, the arguments or the discussions weren't just bounded by government affairs. They was talking about social evolution, what could occur if certain such things are not being done in the society of Haiti. Wow, and I used to just sit there and soak it up. Now, mind you, my elder, my uncle, very, very astute individual, wise gentleman. I would watch him and learn from him. But the watching and learning was not physical. See, like the salt and the sugar, how it dissolved or diluted into the water. This is how my uncle, my elder, dissolved and diluted into my being. His degrees of studies were being passed down to me, not unknowingly, but it was known and seen, but not in that tenacity of seeing with the physical eye. But you can see it now with the physical eye because we have Zodin. See how long it took, just like the salt. The same salt that dissolutes and disappears into the water, once that water evaporates, that salt can be physically seen again in the near future. It becomes like a dry particle, like it crystallizes at the bottom of the cup once it dries. So in that saying, the same way is with the body, because when you perspire, it leaves what? It leaves what you would call like a dirt stain on your body. The perspiration dries around you. Just like your hair, when you aren't taking care of, well, you may be taking care of your hair, but if you're using the wrong shampoo products, what does it leave behind? It leaves dandruff. See, so the salt doesn't just disappear. It dries up and cakes up again, and it reappears again. See, it fades away and come back. Just like your spirit. So when I begin my pursuit and going through my trials and journeys and developing Zodin, or Zodin developing and manifesting itself through me in manifold ways, it taught me essential elements of what my elder was teaching, but not me though. He was teaching his students these things, but I was learning it though. I was learning when not being in his presence. Now, what type of learning is that? What type of classroom we are talking about now? Okay, so let's get back to Zoom again. because I don't want to keep going off. But I'm just trying to express to you that there are developmental stages of studies and teachings, which doesn't acquire or require a student to sit in a literal classroom physically in front of a podium or pulpit, or in the mosque in front listening to a khutbah. There are ways a student can learn in the spiritual realms, but this type of astral traveling is what we here today talking about. Because Zodin, why we pick this time, October 29th to January 2nd, is because at this moment in the atmosphere, we are in a season in Arabic, if I'm correct, it's called Al-Harif, which means fall. So in the fall season, what occurs? It gets cooler, the leaves begin to fall, and that's very important. When the leaves begin to fall, what's taking place here? Something very important taking place here. So on the Zodin tree, we have 64 leaves. What we're doing here with this Soulebration here is this. We said from January 2nd to what you would call spring or Easter, which is April, between April 4th, April 8th, 18th, around that time, we said we would consult over those leaves, 64 leaves that fell in between January 2nd and Easter or spring, the ending of winter or culminating of winter, going into Easter. During that time, we would counsel. We would have the council. So these council members would review our 64 leaves. What I mean by review these 64 leaves, what I'm actually expressing to you is this. During the 64-day march to all the leaves falling and blossoming, because each one that falls allows a new one to blossom. This is what occurs. We give people the opportunity here in Zodin to be able to share their new ideas, their epiphanies, their thoughts, their plans, their agenda. And what we do as a community, Ummah, we come together and we rule over that with our presiding knowledge and wisdom to see who or whether, whose and what ideology or idea or plan, blueprint, agenda we should support. So it shows here in that idea a sense of unbiasedness, meaning that it's not about creed, class, or race, or even gender, but it's about supporting the community and allowing the community to blossom like a flower. You see, under the sun, many things blossom. So who are we to not allow or disallow the natural tendencies of creation to manifest itself? So what we do here is we give opportunity and range to be able to have someone as young as a child, if he wants or she wants to develop a science project, and if it deems is fit that we can sponsor and support it, and it's a worthy opportunity for the community, yes, we all gonna galvanize that one individual and support that idea in that child. Similar things have been done in the past. And this is why we are in the situation we are in today. One of our legacy mentors taught us. Another child was born and he gathered and garnered the cooperation of the whole nation, and he was able to build and make and manufacture something of his liking and his desire. We must do the same. We are already in a situation of exile, and exile is not a situation where you have to be physically picked up and uprooted. Your inability to be able to engage in simple social functions as self-development is exilement. To be able to clothe yourself, feed yourself, put a roof over your head, your inability to do these render you a savage. So in being rendered a savage, that means you went through a degree of exilement. It is time for us to remove ourselves from this self-imposed exilment and literally lift ourselves up. But in order to lift yourself up, you need the right, what you would call, not just dedication, but you need the right steps. You need, and our steps are like 64 leaves. And this step and this approach is not to take away from no one else's ideas, thought, spirituality, or belief system. We have an ingrained belief or idea that everyone has something to offer to the fray. And even if what they think they don't have to offer, we can find something useful of it and make it beneficent for the whole. And this is what is necessary and needed. You have malevolent things and you have benevolent things. Beneficent things and you have maleficent things, maleficent things. We need to be able to have the vision or the view of discernment, a discerning eye to be able to separate. And we can't separate or determine it if there is no rules of us coming together as a consulate. So this is why the Day of Declaration was established. This was established in 2010. In establishing that, we begin to have a what you would call a march down from January 2nd to the beginning of April of spring to prepare for our declaration, for what is to be declared. So in this declaration is where we declare what we are ruling over, what we are supporting, what we are endeavoring to financially support, economically support, and morally support from what was planted during the Zodin tree Soulebration moment. So these 64 leaves also help us with an economic situation that is occurring now in America. It is a print that was already established halfway in part by a teacher to the masses, huddled masses of what you would call slaves of America, which were the so-called African Americans and Native Americans and Hispanic Americans. His name was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He had instituted a move in motion that was very pivotal to our development, which was a fast from December 1st to December 31st. His behalf was doing that.
Yes, wear a smile.
Huh? Not only to
you gotta wear a smile. That's the rule. There you go.
Not only to it wasn't done. It wasn't only. It wasn't only done on behalf of just not eating, but it was done on the behalf of us perceiving what we should participate in. Because when you eat, you gorge what you're eating. You feast on what you're eating. You enjoy what you're eating. So is it with mental imagination, mental perception. Your mind engages and gorges that which it sees and envisioning in its imagination, which is called lust, greed. So we have to curtail those what you would call those things that we are participating in. In doing so, he said we're going to fast at this time because we don't want to support a holiday that does not benefit the indigenous people, the newly became Hispanics, nor the ex-slaves who were brought here on ships in the early 1400s. So this was a march that he began. I'm not too clear if it is still being practiced, but this is something you can read in his books called How to Eat to Live 1 and How to Eat to Live 2, which he elaborates on it elaborately. And he gives you full detail in the usage and function on what you should eat during the fast and how you should fast and what you should do. Well, what we did was we didn't only see it fit to start at that point, But we wanted to start also in a point of examining the significance of Thanksgiving. Then take it back a step forward. The other the minute holidays such as Columbus Day, his birthday, and Halloween. And we wanted to do this as a start, coming off of what holiday? It's the New Year's. The New Year's and their Day of Atonement of the Jewish people or the Hebraic people, the descendants of Jacob or Bana Israel in the Kitab, in the Quran. These people have this point at that time between mid-September and mid-October as the what? The New Year. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement and New Year. These are signs for us. So we said, let's pick up the mantle of not just atoning and coming to a fresh new year, but let's continue on and after we atone, let's fast. And in fasting, we have 64 leaves. Each leaf give you a plateau of guidance and a commandment to decree to you what guidance it is demonstrating to you, such as the first leaf is called the creative. In looking at the word creative, we have the biggest word of all things, the biggest word of all timing, the biggest word of all manifestations, which I say is incorrect. We shouldn't use that word, but use the word creative. This word is imagination. Imagination is something that guides us wrong. What we should be replacing the word imagination with is the word creative. Because once you have the creative power, that meant that you undergone the study of creative wisdom and understanding, that you have the knowledge of the tenets and principles to get you to be able to understand what the creator wants from you, and you as a creation can do for yourself and other creation. That way you know your role. But you can't know your role with vain imagination. You can't sit there just imagining, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. You need to know the laws, the infinite and finite laws that can allow you to assist yourself. So the creator gives you that first commandment. That is the commandment, which in Arabic is the word Amir. The word Amir also is associated with the word prince. So now when we have that next dynamic, see how everyone could play a part in a role, whereas no one is isolated. Your wisdom play a heavy role, but if you don't come and join and allow us to deliberate amongst ourselves and stop the bickering amongst ourselves, we can never know what knowledge can be available if we just challenging, because the word prince stems from the word Amir, which also means command. So now when it dictates the word prince, we know what level of rulership we're functioning with. So if it is the word prince associated with it, is there a word king associated with it? The first prince of this commandment now becomes not just a commandment no more. It becomes an authoritative figure, an authority. So you have an authority and you have a what? A command. Authorities give commands, which is carried out by what you would call the prince, issued from the king. So now when we have the word authority in the fray, the word king denotes rulership. So what we here have now is indication of principalities, of rulers. So with this, we have in the Arabic term, sultan. The word sultan means authoritative figure, leader. So you have sultan now, and you have emir. You have authority, you have a command. You have a sultan, leader, as well as what? A prince, emir, or emir, which is could be a female, or a male, which is prince and princesses. So now we have what you would call, we can dispensate guidance. We can give what you would call deliberation to peers to carry out rules and regulations to be enforced, not imposed, but to be enforced. What you impose is what you impose on yourself, like the fast. You impose on yourself the discipline to carry out things. And this self-imposition is what gives us discipline. Discipline allows you to become an authority. Without discipline, you can't become an authority. So now here in the creative, we have in that first leaf, we classify that as what you would say in the ranks. In this ranks now, how many kings are there? Is it just one king? How many princes are there? Is just one or two? Now we have what you call numeric system comes to be. How so? Because if there's one king, is there many more? How many cardinal points are there? This is dealing with duality again. If there's a north, then it must be a what? South. If there's a east, it must be a west. So we have cardinal principles. So last Zodin holiday, Zodin celebration, holy day rather, not to make it commercial. Last Zodin celebration, we talked about this Zodin, the City of Faith, which is our board game. Let me give a view of it. In our board game, I mean, everything's going to seem, I would say inside out, but we do have our own board game. See, Zodin. This is our board game. It took us time to manufacture this. So everything took time, and we sold a harvest. We're harvesting now. We're harvesting. We're getting the good wheat and removing the tares, the weeds. See, so right here is the Zodin board. Whoa, this is the Zodin board. Just to share with y'all a view of it. So you see, it's a red, white, black, and yellow designation, and green in the center. And then you see around the board, you see, orange looking like fire. You see inside like sand, which represents earth. Then you have on top, you have the darker blue, which is the water, and then you have the clouds, which is the sky. Okay, which is air. The four elements. So with that, what I'm trying to explain to you is that the king has a pivotal point in which he stands on guard. So why is that important? It's very important because you can't have self-government without government. Where is the government going to take place? So in the city of faith, this is what we call the Zodin board, our city of faith. There are essential light beings in position, but are you going to become one of those who sacrifice and engage in the sacrifice of life to allow your sacrifice to be part of the continuation of development? And this is something that many people are not aware of, this sacrifice. So once you have the king and you understand there's four cardinal dimensions, assuming land, brothers and sisters, and this you have the four cardinal points designated to you already. This is teaching you of how to quarter. You have four quarters now. In these four quarters, you have a box. Within the box is how you begin. You have your foundation. You build up your foundation, because you cannot build up your foundation if you know not what your foundation is supposed to represent. And this is very important to governing. So what we're here doing in the city of faith is that we have taken the declaration time from January 2nd to early spring, which is the beginnings of April. From that point, as I said to you before, we come together and we make our supportive means and stance on who agenda and ideas we're going to follow up with. So in following up with these ideas and stance, we allow people to be able to surrender their ideas under the Zodin tree. So you don't only have to surrender an idea, you can come and study the leaf and allow the leaf to give you directions. And then you can proceed to the higher echelons of what the tree has to offer. But the boy is essentially a whole tree establishment itself. So when you have a leaf, this leaf is something I want you to be able to devour and gorge yourself into it. How come a leaf? Because vegetarians eat leaves. The biggest animals on the planet eat leaves. They don't eat meat or flesh. But it's not about not eating flesh or eating flesh. My key thing is for you to understand what this leaf represents to you. This leaf has a command on it. That command is creative, the first command. And this command is founded and rooted in the East. Why so in the East? Is because it is situated, whereas through law and through principles of and tenets of truth, which have nothing to do with me in particularly, because in East cardinal direction, there have what you would call 18 commandments. So 8 times 4, 18 times 4 gives you what? I'm gonna let you little math there, but not to go too far. We already know it's from October 29th to January 2nd. So those amount of days come to a number of 64. So in this, we have what you would call in each direction 18 commandments. And these 18 commandments, each one has their own sultan or authority. So when we go to how we know that it's in the East, perfect example. Before you get to the West, what occurs? The sun begins to do what? It begins to set. This is how we know we're coming out of the East. So when we get to the, then I'm going to more of the philosophy of Zodin. Then the reason why that is so important is because we're showing you that we're not trying to, we're not just what you call pasting and copying from different organizations. No, we're not doing that. We're not trying to plagiarize no one's school of thought. Everything here essentially is rooted within Zodin. And the reason it is so is because, as I told you before, my deliberation of understanding and growing wasn't just solely me on my own. I had members of my family that were studying before me, like my elder. My elder, he teaches us a form of art, of martial arts, which he developed. So when in designing and learning what the design of Zodin is, I want to be able to recognize Zodin if it wasn't for him and his physical attributes of his martials. His martials what guided me to understand, because Zodin is not just a template of metaphysics and philosophy. It is also a unique spiritual yogic system of how it first started. This is how I began to realize that my elder inspired me with this. So inside of that, ladies and gentlemen, how we know it's East is the beginning root of where we must start. It's not necessarily because of Jerusalem or Mecca, no, or Egypt, no, or India. It is not just because of that. It's something else going on here. Okay, so what I'm trying to explain to you, what is going on here is a development of information that is being, how can I say, is being led but not given in the right direction. It is being told to us, but it's not giving us the roots that will make us here in the wilderness understand that walking and living, we are a city. We are not just walking and living. Remember, I told you, when you are here and you don't have economics, you don't have rulership, you don't have control of your education, you don't have control of your principality of your religious worship, then you are asking yourself why I'm constantly putting myself in exile. You are continually letting yourself be exiled. You exile from what? From freedom, justice, and equality. You cannot get out of what you would call this exile until you accept a way of government. And a way of government has to begin if you have an order of what a government is to be. Every government system we have today that we witness, from here to Timbuktu, all based upon a few principles. And these principles have been heavily ignored by us as individuals in wilderness North America. Perfect example, again, go back to the creative, which is the first leaf. And how come it's king, Maliki? What's so important of that and why is it king again is because when the sun rises, it rises at a certain time, a point. What point in time does it rise? It rises between, you would say, 5:30 to 7:30. That is what you call the lagna, which is the strongest point of the sun rising. It's the rising part. It's the rising. So at that rising, at that point is when the east begins. So at this point of time, it's very essential because it's showing us the breaking away of darkness and the luminescence of the day, of the light. So let me show you something here. In Christianity, it teaches us in what you call in the Islamic word, the Injil, which is the New Testament, it says that when Christ or Jesus Christ was facing his death plot, he said that let us have what you would call a supper. In this supper, he delegated 12 men to sit alongside of him, with him ruling as the 13th person. This, many take and extrapolate their own idioms based upon what they perceive the Christ was doing. But nevertheless, it was still 6 on one side, 6 on another, but 12 and him making 13. This happened during supper time, if I'm not correct. Yes, that's the evening time. Evening time, considered day is over. We about to begin a new day. So at this point, he gave a few prayers and also a warning, but he prayed. That's one prayer. And then when he began to leave, he went off to pray again with his apostles. That's 2 prayers. I think he was with either John or Peter. And he began to pray again. And in these prayers, people were, he was being questioned about the prayers. He's like, oh, come on, no. He explained to the apostles, don't worry about it. Let's just take what we have to take care of. And some of them was even too lazy to pray at that time, particularly. But yet, he continued on. And then he told one of the disciples during the supper, he said, before the cock crows thrice, you will turn on me. I'm not concerned with the betrayal of him, of Peter, nor of Judas. My point to establish is timing here. I'm trying to point time to you and cater it back to the beginning of East, at the beginning of the day, the dawn, and how it represents the king, and why the king is there at the east, at the eastern gate or eastern threshold. Very important. So now you have a designated time here of the cock crowing. When a cock is crowing, that also signifies the natural propensity that nature placed as an order and a command into that creature. So that is that creature's prayer. Like when the Muslims sing the Adhan before the prayer. In the morning, that's the first thing is the Adhan. So it's the same thing with the bird. The bird is singing its praise, mantra, whatever, what have you. So this is a second prayer occurring. So in proceeding to that, there was another prayer being made. And in this prayer, it was shown and established that it was later on, again, going into the part when he made a prayer on the cross. Many people say that he was saying, Father, why have you forsaken me? What have you? I'm not arguing the point. The point I'm trying to establish is that from the evening to the next evening, it was prayers being established. And we know for a perfect example that in the Islamic tradition, there were 5 prayers to be made. These 5 prayers are in sequence with the 5 intervals of the day. And they match the sun. No one's saying sun worship. All I'm saying is that it's very important to understand the sequence of timing. Timing is broken down into quarters of the day. And it's very important because if you do not understand time and how to use time, there's no such thing as self-governing. Okay? Because when you are going to court, when you are lobbying in Congress or for the Senate to get a law passed for yourself when you're private corporations or your non-profit corporations, there is a timeline there. When a representative is questioning someone in a Senate hearing or congressional hearing, the lady or man is giving a set amount of time to ask that question and to rebuttal the question. Even in a debate, things are giving timings. Just so it is with us. If we don't organize ourselves, how can we free ourselves from exile? When you were exiled, that means you were a slave. When you are a slave, you have no control of your own time. You are being what? Commissioned by others to serve their time. And their time that you're serving benefits them because they know what to do with time. And we're not delegating our time appropriately. This is why October 29th was so pivotal, because from this day, after the atonement, it allows us to be able to prepare for the rupturing of hell. You said, what, hell? Oh my God. Yes, I said hell, because the example and an examination of that, use a discerning eye now. What's the next day after the 30th? It's the 31st. What occurs on 31st? Everyone in the whole planet decides to do what? To dress and act other than themselves. And the basic theme of it is what? Demons, ghouls, goblins, trolls, and beasts of all like in nature coming out of hell for one day. It is taught in the scriptures is one day with the Lord. It serves as time amount of years for us. So it's a time again. Timing is very key here. So one day of them coming out of hell, how long is that one day to last for us that's in exile? So our exilement, is that to be exacerbated in this one day of hell? So we have to begin to understand the motions of what's occurring once we come out of what? The atonement. Remember, the new year comes in, Rosh Hashanah, the new year. Then Yom Kippur. Yom is that day again. Kippur is an atonement. So we're coming from a point of atonement to walk right into hell. This is what we're going into. Because once we go into, before you even come into hell, let me give you an analogy of what else occurs right before that. It elaborates on Columbus' birthday and some president's birthday soon to come. But when this, who is this person Columbus to us? You may say he means nothing to you, but my family might immigrated from Haiti. So we know him very well. So you see now how important time is. Timing just is a point that you pick the right leader at the right time. And it's not about picking and saying, oh, my father's better than your father better than my father. No. Can your father plant a tree? Can your father plant a grapevine? Can your father till the soil? We need all three of them. But it's in timing that they all become relevant. Zodin is trying to elaborate to us the essentials of what the view is. View in Zodin's leaf is in the north. That's the second leaf in the north. On the second pan, that's the philosophy of Zodin. But going back to the king and how it represents the creative and why it's in the east, it is because in the east, we're talking about development. We're talking about a seed being what you would call nurtured, being planted and being harvested and budding and we can see, and it's beneficial, and it can feed, it can sustain the surface dwellers of the earth, which are we. We are not at this moment at liberty to say we even have a king. Who is your king? This is so essential. When the children of Israel, from the book of Shemot or Exodus, the first thing it said was that they had a what? A messenger, a prophet. But even so, once you finish the whole Torah, you had to go into the next stage of books, which is called the what? The Nabavim, which is the book of prophets. They had to have a prophet to appoint judges. You see, we're going back to, again, court systems again. Timing. Everything is operating on timing. Judges rules over things. You gauge over something. Christ had 12 apostles. He's the 13th. Just like we have, when you go to court, you have what you call a certain amount of jurors. Prosecutor, attorney, judge. And you even have the recorder. So all these things are due in timing. 12 is half the day because it represents 12 hours in the day, 12 hours in the night, which are broken down to more quarters, depending upon what is necessary to be developed. So in order to develop something, you have to understand growth has to be the essential byproduct of what you're developing or what you're growing, what you're sowing. So in the north, the first leaf in the north is growth. Growth comes from where? Reproducing. Not just replicating, but reproducing. So you have here the last leaf in the east is 18 now. The last leaf in the east is repair decay. Huh? Repair decay? What is that? How repair decay? When you cut yourself, let me say you. Let's look at a snake, a lizard, and a frog. Or an alligator, a snake, or alligator, a lizard, and a serpent. When you cut a serpent, or you cut him in the wrong spot behind his tail, what happens? When you cut a frog or a lizard, tail or arm, what happens? When you cut an alligator, same thing, what happens? They can reproduce these ligaments at most times. And what a serpent is known for? Shedding its skin, rearing new skin, repair decay. Very important now. And that's the last day of the east. What's the first day in the north? Growth. So now you know what grows. Why is it north on? Why is growth in the north the first leaf? Look at the perfect example again. Spring means to what? Spring up, to blossom. Something spring bounce back up to life, back to life. So Easter symbolizes this commercial ideology of a rabbit coming out of a hat. But anyway, but the thing is a rabbit. And then you have, I just talked about it, the crucifixion and coming back to life, repair, decay. So this happens in the East. Okay, now, what is repair, decay again? In the East with creativity is because when you have that seed that was under the foliage of fall, the shedded skin, that shedded skin, which is the leaves, covered that seed. That snow that plummeted it, that rain, that cold weather that plummeted it, turned into soil over that seed. Allowed what? It gave that seed a natural degree of what? Incubating time. So when spring came to be, what it did, it sprung forth. North, right? Growth. Okay. That's Zodin. It's there. We don't really have to say much. It's there. The teachings is there. So king, my dear sirs, is the first. When the prophets and the judges saw what was going on with the children of Israel in the book of Judges, going to the book of Samuel, going to Samuel 2, then going to what's the next book? Okay. It's teaching us something here. They had to pick a king at a certain point in time in order for them to become what? The nation that they are to become. The kingdom that they wanted to have. Kingdom? There is no kingdom without a king. And there's no rulership without judges. But you need that messenger to point it out to you. So king is the first. And there are 4 kings. You said, how come there's 4? Let me give you another thing. We all know, and I'm about to close in a few. I don't want to keep going further. It's time. I know people have things to do. Many of us have played cards. So in Zodin, we have the Zodin cards for you. In Zodin cards, these cards represent the children of the heavenly spirit cards for the path of life. But for those who play cards commercially, I like the game Spades. Some may like Bloody Hearts. But in Spades, how many cards is it? What, 52? And you have 4 sets, 4 decks. Each deck is a different symbol, but each deck has the same suits repetitively. Once you pass 1 to 10, you go to what? A suit. Like a royal flush, you have a royal house. You have king first. 4 kings, 4 queens, 4 what? Jacks and 4 knights. These are the principalities. The 4 representing 1 in each cardinal point. So 4 players can play at the same time. What are we doing? We're trying to rule each other's kingdom, rule each other's land, trying to overcome each other. So how can you see that in cards? Yes, you can, because the card's a rectangle shaped image. But let's take that rectangle shaped image and make it to one magnified image, a chessboard or a checkerboard. The chessboard, you have what each side? You have 8 pieces, 8 pieces, 8 pawns, and you have what, 7 pieces? Or yeah, so you have all together 8, so it's 16. 16 on the other side. So what is the objective? It's your kingdom against your opponent kingdom, but in spades, it's 4 kingdoms. So it's 4 kingdoms against what? The whole planet going at war, but in a pyramidal way, pyramid type form, because where everybody's going, when you're playing cards, where everybody's dealing to or playing to, the center. This point enumerates what I'm talking about here. The word center is so pivotal, but we have to learn how to plant in order to understand our center. The center, my beloved brothers, is you, is me, and acknowledging that we are in self-examination. So with Zodin, we come together in the consulate to remove ourselves, to make plans, to make the agenda, to remove ourselves, because guns ain't going to do it, brothers and sisters. Just simple protesting ain't going to do it. Guns play a part later on, but as far as guns are concerned, I just want to give you an example. We won with guns already in Haiti. So that's not to be ruled out. But litigation has to be put to another level. But before we can even go to litigation, we need to first have our own lawyers that was read from our consulate, meaning that we paid from their schooling from pre-K to getting their bar. We got to sponsor that, brothers and sisters. It's like looking at the world and you're saying that it says it takes $100,000, right? But you're missing not $100,000 to make 1 million. So you got 100 million, but you're missing not 100 million to make 1 billion. So you're saying you got 100 billion, but you're still missing 900 billion to make 1 trillion. When COVID occurred, brothers and sisters, very important for you to understand this. When COVID occurred, 2.2 trillion was used for the package to help the people in America, to make them, to keep them focused, to keep them on edge from falling into complete disparity and confusion and chaos. well, $1,200 a check, $1,200 a check to each person, and a couple of grants and a couple of loans, PPP loans to certain organizations and corporations. It went out that fast. So do we have 100 billion African American billionaires? I don't think so. So we have to form consulates of deliberation that can sacrifice for the community. It's very important, because if we don't sacrifice for our community to rear our own, then there will be no our own. There will be just you bickering day and night, which is gnawing and gnashing of teeth. I said hell before. That one day Halloween becomes centuries for us. And Zodin Day, Zodin Tree Soulebration begins on that 29th. Because we're telling you, after atonement, it don't stop. The fight just begins. And fasting is not just fasting for food. It's fasting from ideas. It's fasting from petty lusts, desires, misuse of funds, misuse of our thinking, our thoughts, our ambitions. And let's start gearing and channeling ourselves. Let's use these 64 leaves, and and those who follow us on IG can get an idea or a glimpse of those leaves. And we would share every day what a leaf is. Just one leaf may nourish you for like a whole continent, because it has that much knowledge inside of it. So yeah, like I said, so go to Zodin.com, Zodincards.com, and soon you're going to see not only the Zodin cards, but you will see the Zodin board. You will see the Zodin oracles, and you will see the new and coming soon to you Zodin tarot. We have our own La Spirit tarot coming to you. El Universal de Hermes, our own deck coming to you. Today is the Hermes, which is described. So we have prepared these decks for you, because it's not just about writing books in English for you. We need to creatively penetrate your imagination and remove those illusions and remove those shadows of darkness that are lurking in your subconscious, and begin to overrule that darkness and give you some light, so you can become that light, so you can control your subconsciousness. If you can control your consciousness, your subconsciousness, then you can control your will. That will is that fortune will, not fortune 500, but we can have fortune anything once we control that will. Some call it the mandala, some call it the chakra. Whatever it is, my dear brothers and sisters, we can steer that well once we have control of our subconsciousness. But you got to begin to plant and sow your seeds. And this is where I'll leave off with you, brothers and sisters. So with that, we did have a book. We do have a special book too. You will be able to acquire and study as well. It's called Zodin Kitab. So brothers and sisters, when we close, y'all missed the opening though, but when we close, I like to close with a prayer. And our prayers are not just done orally, but it's also done physically. Because just imagine your tongue was withheld from you. You couldn't speak. What prayer would you enunciate? No matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter. Your tongue is being bound. You'd have to use your body, which is a lesson taught to us by the ancient teachings of the Vedic scholars, Vedic rishis, Vedic sages, or you would say Kemetic sages, or you would say Mayan shamans, Aztec shamans, Inca shamans. We would speak them through our body, which is one of the highest lights. I will perform the prayer. That was the prayer of Amen, which we open and close with Amen. So, brothers and sisters, may the Great Spirit guide your prayers, guide your choices, guide your deliberation as we trek down to the ending of this new year, and we prepare again for our divine consulate coming in of spring. Peace and blessings. And in faith, everybody enjoy. This is today's leaf is youthful folly. This is why you need a scribe, to remind you of your youthful folly. Peace and blessings.